Hi, Joyce here. Today I want to talk about delegation. I have to say that for the majority of my career, I was the worst delegator on the planet. I had this fundamental belief that it was quicker and easier for me to do it myself than it was for me to train someone else and manage them to make sure it was right and review their work. I thought, oh, nothing worse. So then, a couple of years ago, so what happens is you just end up doing everything and you have way too much on your plate and you become overwhelmed and overworked, etc. And so for a number of reasons, about 3 years ago, I decided to go down to 3 days a week. And when I did that, I had to let go. I had to delegate because there was no way I could get all the work done and meet my goal of cutting back my hours. So I went from like 7 days a week to 3 days a week. So the biggest piece of advice I would give is that I couldn't solve the problems myself. And so I not only delegated, but I delegated this problem so that someone else was going to solve it. So it's not like I solved it and then handed it to somebody else. I had them solve the problem. The old Einstein saying, you can't solve the problem in the same level of consciousness in which it was created, was perfect for this situation. And so what I did was so one example was after I cut down to 3 days a week, about 8 months later, I then moved. And because what happened was we had a Boston office, which had closed, and so a lot of the mail was coming to my home. And so when I moved, they could no longer send the mail to my house. And so someone had to figure it out. And sure enough, I delegated to someone else. They figured it out. And it was the first time that I was able to just let a big, huge chunk of work go. Because checks would come to my house, but there was no one else in my geographic area that could go to the bank and cash the checks and all. So I just was able to let it all go. And someone else came up with the great idea. And it didn't take them long. Within 2 or 3 weeks, they had found a very good virtual office and solved the problem. The second thing was automation. Again, I delegated it to somebody else. And they kept looking around saying, you know, Joyce, we could automate this. This whole system, we could automate. And so I could do things very quickly, and they weren't manual so much, but they weren't super automated either. And I wasn't great at that. And so this other person on my team was awesome at automation and has automated, probably half of the things that we used to do before in a much slower process. But again, I wouldn't have come up with those solutions. So in order to delegate, I actually delegated the problem as well as the action item. I have to admit it was really hard for me to let go, and I kept like peeking to make sure it was being done right, and etc. But what happened, the beauty of what happened is, number one, I built a lot of trust with my team and empowered them. And they were so pumped to be doing these other roles, coming up with great ideas, because to a certain point, people are motivated by money, but once you get to a certain point, they've done lots of studies where you're really motivated by making an impact and making a difference. And each person who I had delegated this stuff to was making their own impact using their own creativity. And the most important thing is it gave me freedom. So delegation is now, for me, synonymous with freedom.